Ich heiße Diana Larsen. Ich lerne Deutsch langsamer. So langsam. So I'm going to speak in English. Thank you for indulging me. I appreciate that. It was a while ago that I realized that when I travel from country to country to country to country, it was unreasonable to expect that I would become fluent in every language that I encounter. It makes me sad. I wish I could speak all the languages of all the countries I go to. I find it very rewarding to connect in that way. And it's the kind of respect that I would like to be able to give everywhere I go. But I only have one life. And there's lots of languages to learn. I have actually chosen German, Deutsch, as the language I am making the deepest dive into, but I'm not there yet. I was, however, delighted as I was listening. I mean, it's a good exercise for me to listen to the kind of introductions that were going on here and how you were, and I caught words here, and I caught some of my favorite words, like zusammen is one of my favorite words. Überraschung is another one of my favorite words. So I got to hear some of the things I love to hear as I was listening to the introductions. So that was very sweet for me. So today we are, and the other thing I wanted to mention is the activity that we did to begin with. I realized I missed a great opportunity. I was speaking, I don't know if we exchanged names. Did we exchange names?
I'm Kali.
Oh, Kali. Who sails tall ships around the world. Wow, what an awesome hobby, right? And I just said, well, I do my strength training, I walk, and I realized I missed the opportunity to say, and I do roller derby. But actually, this is a side effect of walking and taking the wrong step. So that's why these are here. It's not that I'm so cool that I do roller derby. I only wish I was. So we're here today to talk about learning culture. And I have a strong sense, and as you will be able to tell as we go through this keynote, that we are moving from, just like we moved from manual labor to kind of office work, knowledge work, we are now moving to learning work, where having past knowledge isn't enough anymore because the world is moving too fast. And the things that we need to know and understand aren't even here yet. We have to build our capability to be able to learn those things, and we need that in our organizations as well, and we need leaders at every level of the organization who can help us create that environment where we are learning. So that's why we're going to be talking about this today. So Rolf introduced me. The first book that a lot of people know me by is this first edition of the Agile Retrospectives book. I'm happy to announce to you that there is a second edition that's twice as big, has more stuff in it, and it contains things about remote retrospectives and all the things people have been wondering about. How the heck do we help our teams actually make improvements, things like that, is in this book. So if you haven't seen this one, this is a good one to get. I've written a few other books. Most recently, and the one I'm going to be talking about today is this one, the Lead Without Blame book, because really focusing much more on the needs for leaders to understand their role in this movement that we are with. And I've also contributed to some other books. James Shore's The Art of Agile Development, which I actually think is the best book about how teams build software. And another book that I've been working on with a whole group of colleagues called Agile Coaching Qualities, which is about what are the qualities that we admire in the people who are helping us learn to do our jobs. And that's been a delight. We started working on that in 2018, and we're still working on it. And if you want to know about where I am, where I'm going, what I'm doing over time, if I'm going to be in a city near you again, this is the best way. Stay in touch means you go and sign up for my newsletter. Only comes out once a month. It's not a very difficult read, frankly. But it will help you know where I am and when I'm going to be there. Like next week, I'll be in Agile Prague. So when I was writing this book, I did a lot of reflection on what my previous contributions had been. And I thought a lot about my collaboration with Tricia, my co-author, was such that it really made me think about, I'm getting to the age where I'm thinking about what is my legacy? What has been the force of my life? Where have I been headed all this time? And when I thought about the retrospectives book and the liftoff book and the learning book and the agile coaching quality, I mean, all of those things, as I thought about that body of work, I realized that my focus has been primarily in 3 areas. And not just in those 3 areas discretely, but in the combination of those. So my heart is with leaders, because leaders at every level, whether you've got a title or no title, at every level, leaders are the ones who have the most influence over what's it like at work for us. Do we have the things we need? Do we know what direction we're going in? All of those things are things that are essential things that leaders provide. Connection to the rest of the organization, if we're in an organization. And the other part of my heart is really with teams. I am much more interested in how people are together, zusammen, in groups, right? That's why I love that word. I've always been very much oriented toward what are the behaviors, what are the dynamics going on in a group of people? How are they interacting? What's going on? How are they helping each other? How are they getting each other's way? All of those kinds of things. And more with this advent of learning work, I have realized that what we need for teams is resilience. Is that ability to face challenges and work their way through them. So we're going to be talking a lot more about that. And then the third part is, how do we create the environment where leaders can succeed and resilient teams can succeed and everyone has what they need? So those 3 things have always been the focus of my work. What's going on in the environment, in the organization? What's our culture? What's our local work environment like? How are the leaders influencing that? And what do the teams take from that and go forth and build the things that we need them to build? And altogether, the central core of that is getting the best out of the people and the organization and the environment that we have. Optimizing our capability to contribute what we can contribute to the world. We may have a very small customer base. Maybe we're only contributing to a small number of users, but we are essential to those users. We may be the leaders at the top of the organization, and we are trying to build an organization where everyone can achieve and succeed. That's a capability that we are trying to optimize for. You notice I don't say maximize, optimize. Get the most that we are able to do. Build our capability. So that's my central message. If you don't listen to anything else through this talk, you can doze off now if you like. And we need kittens. These are my grand kittens. They are now a little more than a year old. They're much bigger than this now, but I still love this picture. So this is when they were babies. So let's talk about you a little bit. I'm curious. I have a firm belief that everyone in this room is a leader. But I know that we have different lines of sight for our leadership. We have different ways that we engage that. And so I'm curious about what leaders do we have in this room? So how many of you have that formal leadership title? Just show of hands. Are you how many of you are at the executive level in your senior executive level in your organization? How many of you are maybe middle managers, functional managers? Okay, a few of those. How many have a formal title like coach or scrum master or that sort of leader? All right, that's the most of you, but not necessarily the majority. Interesting. Okay, but then in this room, we also have informal leaders. People who don't necessarily have the title of leader, but all of us at one time or another move in and out of leadership roles based on our backgrounds, our expertise, our seniority in the organization, how well do we know the system. We all can be called upon to influence people around us based on who we are, what we know, what we are capable of. So, how many of you would say you prefer, and you may raise your hand more than once, how many of you would say that you lead from the position of a team member? Right, wonderful, okay. How many are staff in an organization where you're providing those enabling activities so that other people can do their jobs well? Oh, good. I'm really happy to see that. Really happy to see that. And then finally, there are those of us who enact more often in smaller groups, close at hand, people who we trust and rely on us, and we lead as a colleague for other folks. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in this room who didn't raise your hand at all? Good, you're validating my assumption that everyone in this room is a leader. It takes many forms. Okay, so you're a leader. Leaders are everywhere in the organization. We're going to revisit this slide later on with a little more data on it. But we know that you meet challenges all the time when you are in that role, whatever it is, of a leader. There are interesting things that you have to deal with, issues that come up where it means that you need to kind of step forward for that. And you may step forward with a group of people. I'm trying very hard not to talk about examples from the news today. But I will say that some things are happening in my country that are making me very sad. And I just need to sort of say that, put it out there. I'm not going to be talking about it. but I can't ignore it. So, keep going. Yeah, we can talk about it later in smaller groups if we want. Okay, so when you are facing those challenges as a leader, how many of you have lived this story? You're getting ready to go into the meeting. Maybe it's a retrospective, maybe it's some project planning meeting, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's a post-mortem, one of those kinds of things. And you know that in this meeting, people are going to discuss something that didn't go the way we hoped it would go. Some may be calling it a failure, an epic fail. Some people might be just saying mistakes were made, right? Some people are just saying, I'm really disappointed in the outcomes we're getting so far. Could be any of those kinds of discussions. And as a result, because we know we're going into this meeting, there are people getting ready, getting their fingers ready to make sure that wherever that goes, it doesn't come toward us, right? Nobody wants the blame to fall on them. So, instead of getting busy and saying, oh, well, this thing happened, how are we going to repair this? How can we best move forward from this? What can we do to mitigate the impact of this? And looking forward, we spend a lot of time looking backward to the part that we can't do anything about and figure out who to blame. Now, those of us who are systems thinkers know that it's unlikely that there is a single point of failure. There is unlikely things have been working together in their complex ways, and what has emerged is a failure because we couldn't anticipate every possible thing that might happen. And that's why looking forward makes a lot more sense. I think we have to acknowledge the situation and maybe the impact that it had. But from there, we can't go back and change the past. And we will all do better if we move forward. Because when we blame, we make assumptions about other people's assumptions and other people's motivations and other people's intentions. And that may or may not be true. Actually, more likely, probably not true. Our assumptions are not on target, are on base. Because we're thinking about other people's behavior not from their point of view, but from our point of view. Well, if I did that, this is what I would be doing, right? So we can't really know what's going on with them. And blame, and then if we take it on, the shame that goes with that, are toxic. Both are very toxic in our work environments. And it's become, unfortunately, an organizational pattern in many companies, many work groups. And it doesn't help us. It actually gets in our way. Because when we are blaming and feeling shame, it suppresses our ability to do good work. We're all focused on that, and we're not focused out here on how we can make things better going forward. So, lead without blame, and that is possible. And as leaders, we have There have been a number of observations about this. One of my favorites is Peter Drucker, who was very hard on managers and management and people in formal leadership roles in organizations. And this is one of his interesting quotes. The management role is primarily involved in making it harder for people to get things done, right? Putting barriers in the way, processes that don't really help, and things like that. He said that in like 1970 something, 1960, 1970 something, and it's still going on today in 2025. And a lot of this is because we learn to lead, we learn what leadership looks like from our role models, who are basing their leadership behaviors on their role models, and theirs, and theirs. And it's that looking backward instead of looking forward to what new behaviors might be required in this situation to create different kinds of environment, a different kind of culture that will help us move forward. So let's break free from that trap of how it's always been. We've always done it that way. Or the sort of parallel to we've always done it that way is we tried that before and that never worked, right? That reviewing the past to make decisions about now when we know the world is changing all the time and much faster than it ever has before. So people are doing some research, some interesting research on what's called self-determination theory. And some of it showed up in an article in Scientific American a few years ago. I always thought Scientific American was only about technical topics, but it turns out they do science on a lot of things. And I learned about Scientific American as a journal because my stepfather, who passed away last year, was a rocket scientist, and he subscribed. And he was telling me about some of the interesting things he read. So I started picking it up, and the very first edition I got had this article in it. And as I investigated more, I discovered that there is this whole body of research called self-determination theory, which is about autonomy at work and autonomy in teams and what makes a good leader in situations that require autonomy from individuals or groups, teams. And they have some theories about leadership, and what the research they've done shows that the more you are on the continuum, there's a continuum, and it starts over here with controlling dominant leaders, the kind we've always been trained to be. Have all the answers, tell people what they need to do, make sure they're doing it the way you tell them to do it. Right? Over here. My way or the highway. Right? To somewhere over here that's called the autonomy supportive leaders that say things like, let's figure this out together. Or here's what we're trying to do. Give me a direction. Help me understand what's the best way to get there. Right? I'll give you the support you need to make that happen. I'll get you the resources from the rest of the organization and so on. Autonomy supported. So that's the continuum. I'm not saying you're either this or that. You could be anywhere along that scale. But in the Agile world, if there still is an Agile world, that's a whole other conversation. We can have that in the open spaces. In the Agile world, we tend to say we're looking more for those autonomy supportive leaders. I did a little research because as more I thought about it, the more I thought about, there's a book that came out in the early 1950s by a man named Douglas McGregor called Theory X, Theory Y. How many of you have heard Theory X, Theory Y? Oh, good. I'm always disheartened when no hands go up in the room for that question. Because I started looking at this and I thought, well, isn't this kind of Theory X, Theory Y in different garments, and isn't that 70 years old theory now, right? But what I noticed was the things that we tend to gravitate toward, the things that are the opposite of, or are exactly in alignment with leading without blame, all fall in that autonomy supportive column. Right? So the research is onto something, I believe. So learning leaders, I hope I've established now that I think learning leaders are the way to go. Is that autonomy supportive, supporting learning in your organization? Anybody here think I'm on some other track? Oh, good. They're happy about that. So learning leaders ask questions. How do we ensure that we're getting the kind of environment that our people need to do their best work and to give the benefits that our customers need and our business direction needs and so on? What do we already have in our organization that we can build on? If you haven't heard about the theories around appreciative inquiry, it's a good place to look. It says, when we focus in on blaming and problems, we learn more about how to create blame and problems. Let's focus in more on where things are going the way we want them to go, even if it's just small, and fan the flames on that and see if we can't make that happen more often. Appreciate where things are going the way we want them to go. So what do we have to build on? And then, where can we make the greatest positive impact? If we just start in one place, that has an effect. It will begin to spread through the organization. So, that means that learning leaders need to rethink some of those habits that we have been taught. Some of those controlling dominant habits that we've been told are the right way to go about this, and rethink what could we be doing instead. Because you don't end in a habit by just saying, I'm going to stop doing that habit. You need to be able to replace it with something. Anybody here studied the literature about habits and how to make new habits and stuff like that? You can't just say, I'm going to stop doing this. You've got to say, I'm going to shift, and instead of that, I'm going to do this over here. So let's talk about that. We're going to look at 3 possible things that we might do. And the first one is encourage innovation, encourage learning, encourage thinking about things in new ways, encourage where can we repurpose our resources, or is there a different way that we can use this asset that we have, or all those kinds of questions. And once we are doing that, we have a sense of people get better at doing that, and we can begin to have more confidence that we will be able to do that. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So we lead with what Tricia and I named the 4 C's of learning leader behavior. Now there's a tons of 4 C's out there out in the world, and we know that. But C just seems to be a letter that lends itself to clusters. Clusters of behaviors, clusters of thinking. So we came up with 4 C's of learning leader behaviors. And they are courage, compassion, confidence, and complexity. And courage is that willingness to say, I don't know. And in many organizations, if you have a leadership role, people want to be able to come to you and you give them the answers. But none of us can have all the answers, not in today's world. So we have to be willing to say, I don't actually know. Let's go find out. Let's do some discovery together. Or who do you need to help you discover the answer to this? I'll support you in that way, but I can't give you the answer. I don't know. That takes enormous courage. Harvard Business Review, this latest issue, had a whole article about leaders and courage. It was a really good article. But it is the same kind of, are we encouraging people to ask questions, or are we asking them to already come with the answers? Don't bring me a problem unless you've got a solution. Well, how can I already know what the solution is if I haven't gotten any additional information that might be out there, right? So we encourage questions. We encourage what some people call sitting in inquiry, right? Compassion is show that we value the willingness to learn, and show that learning can be hard for some people. The very idea of there's something more to learn. I was in a very large organization in Silicon Valley one time. Esther and I were there to give a tech talk. And we were told that no one would ask questions at the end of our tech talk because everyone there had been hired because they were the best and brightest right out of university, and they could not afford to look like they didn't know. My heart just sank. We finally made a little agreement with somebody that they would ask a couple of questions at the end of our talk so that everybody else could see it was okay to ask questions in our talk. It was about retrospectives, right? Yeah. Oops, I keep doing that. I need to not do that. So the next one is confidence. Not cheerleading, not kind of that false bravado sort of thing, but real secure confidence. We are building an environment where people have permission and encouragement to question and learn. And we know that because of that, whatever challenge comes their way, they will be able to meet it. They will be able to learn their way through it, because they've got what they need to be able to do that. And then lastly, the understanding that we live primarily in a complex world. The things that we encounter that have simple solutions, they're still around, but they are much fewer and further between. There's a lot more that's coming at us from chaos. At minimum, highly complicated, that maybe require numerous numbers of steps to figure something out. Long chains of diagnostics. Or it's very complex and we really can't know at all because the unknown unknowns that we're going to encounter. Or the chaos. And it really helps if leaders have a good sense of what that means in their situation, and how they might approach that in the best possible way. So as a leader, you do not have a complexity theory or complex systems theory that you rely on or feel confident in. Human systems dynamics, Dave Snowden's Cynefin, Donella Meadows, Jürgen Apollo's 3.0. There are a lot of them out there. I'm not particularly endorsing any particular one, but having some view of what are the dynamics of complexity in our world, so that you can see them, understand them, and then influence them in some way. Okay, so if you're interested more in the 4 C's, if you click on this QR code, and I will make these, that we're doing the recording, and I will make these slides available to everybody here if you don't catch it this time. But they're on at comparativeagility.com. We have a little personal assessment and leadership team assessment for how are we doing on courage, compassion, confidence, and complexity. And what might we need to try if we want to build our strength in one or more of those areas. Okay, the second one, the first one was encouraging innovation. Now we also want to make sure that we are creating that environment. And that means focusing on 4 factors, 4 resilience factors. We write about these in the book, that every team needs to pull together to be able to work in the world, to get work done in the world. And some of them are familiar. So these are the 4 that I just had on there. This takes a long time. Sometimes yes, okay, there. There we go, okay. So let's look at the first one. Collaborative connection. This is about building trust. This is a thing we often address. If we're doing team development at all, we are probably doing something to build these collaborative connections. It's familiar, and it's critical. It's very important that we do this with our teams. So we're looking at psychological safety and dependency, the 2 top things on Google's Aristotle research about really highly performing, highly productive teams. There's good psychological safety. They are dependable. When they say they're going to do something, they do it. And they're continually looking at this question of do we have enough trust in the beginning to just get started? And are we continuing to build on that trust with all of our interactions and everywhere we go? And then the second one is about conflict. Now this is another thing that a lot of teams learn some things about. It's not totally out of the ordinary. But the ability to meet conflict and move forward helps with resilience because humans have conflicts. It's not a problem, it's a feature. It's not a bug, it's a feature. It's a feature of being human. We are sometimes going to have competing ideas, we're going to have competing goals, different things are going to come up and we're not necessarily going to be in 100% agreement. It just is what it is. But we can take conflict and transform it into forward movement. And helping teams understand how to do that, the most effective ways to do that, is a very important leadership role. Feedback, peer-to-peer, interpersonal feedback is really important there. Deal with things while they're small. And then inclusive collaboration. In spite of what else you might be hearing in the world, it's still important to notice that we are not all clones. We are not all the same, and we want to celebrate that. We're not all the same, and all that diversity is actually a good thing for us because it brings us new perspectives. We're able to consider all the possibilities and the potentials because we are inclusively collaborative. We're not getting just one point of view over and over and over again. And finally, one that is probably dealt with the least in most teams is this idea of power dynamics. Another thing that is not a bug, but a feature of the human environment. But we tend to think there's only one kind of power. It's just power over other people. It's coercive power. It's demanding power. It's that controlling dynamic, my way or the highway kind of power. And that's not our only option. If we understand all of the possible sources of power, we can choose which ones we apply in different situations. And we learn the extraordinary power of thinking in terms of power with. Not of sharing the pie, but making the pie bigger. Right? So these are the 4 C's of learning behavior. And these are the kinds of habits that we are encouraging you to consider a change. These are the resilience factors that we need to see on teams. And leaders have the influence, whether formally or informally, to begin to grow these dynamics and build resilience in the teams. So we're building resilience in the leaders with the 4 C's. We're building resilience in the teams with the resilience factors. We want to do both of those things to create the kind of environment that we are looking for. I know I'm over time. I'm almost there. So the last one is momentum. And it is moving from short-term to longer-term thinking. Knowing, we're not just going to fix the problem by blaming somebody today, but we're going to look longer-term to see what possible new solutions might be out there. Are going to adjust our strategic thinking so that we evolve when our circumstances are evolving. And we're going to maintain vigilance and valiance and proactiveness to keep that momentum going. So, we've been talking a lot about valiant leaders and dynamic environments. You've heard a lot, if you've watched any of my other videos or anything like that, you've heard a lot about resilient teams, how to help grow them with retrospectives and good team chartering and liftoffs and all those other things. But we also need to focus on these other 2 areas, leadership and the environment we want to create. So the practical bottom line is, if we want to create this kind of environment, because the other kind is just getting too expensive, frankly, we want to lead without blame, emphasize learning and resilience, look for ways to get the best with the people you've got. Just in a quick tangent, I am shocked at the number of layoffs that happen where companies don't first, before they move to that, go and find out from their frontline people what they've noticed that might be helpful to the company before they chuck them out the door. All of that institutional knowledge, all of those opinions and ideas. I'm continually shocked by that. Seems like the height of non-intelligence. I won't call it by its other name. So this is really a very pragmatic talk. People accuse me sometimes of being, too much on the humane side, too touchy-feely, I'm a very pragmatic person. People call me sometimes a visionary pragmatic. My business partner once said, well, I don't know if you're a visionary pragmatic or a pragmatic visionary. But that desire to get good results is deep in me. But I have learned that this is the way to that outcome. So, as you leave here and go into the rest of the conference today, rethink, activate learning, figure out where you want to lead and head in that direction. And that's my call to action for you. Everyone here can find a way to joyfully strengthen the leadership that you provide. And I encourage you to do that. I have a few places I'm going to be. If you are interested in learning more about Liftoff, this QR code will take you to a place. We are offering a workshop, first time ever workshop, in October, 2 half days virtually, so you can take it from any place you want to, and it's really cheap, because it's the first one, so just saying. But I'm also going to be in Prague next week, and then I'm in Romania later in October. If you want to stay in touch with me, here are a bunch of ways to stay in touch with me. Again, if you want to be on my newsletter, that's the QR code for that. And I showed you my grandkittens at the very beginning of this talk. This is Chief. He's in charge at our house. He is the Chief Cat Officer, the CCO, and he makes sure that we all stay on the narrow path. He has his ideas about what should be happening, and he provides cuddles. So, you know, he's not totally a demanding leader, right? He has his ways. He's figured us out. So thank you for coming to my talk. I will be in the open space. I will be more than willing to answer your questions. I don't know that we have time to do that right now. If we do, fine. Somebody let me know. But the first person who comes to me with a question gets a book.
Ich bin halt jetzt aber auf dem Weg über einen Grafiker.